Samsung has come out with their new top foldable flagship, the Galaxy Z Fold6. What sorts of innovations are in store this year, and is this the foldable phone you should be after? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Galaxy Z Fold6 review. If you're not familiar with these sorts of phones, the Z Fold6 is a device with a large inner screen, sort of like a mini tablet. But that screen is foldable, and folding it over turns the device into something like a typical smartphone, with you using a secondary screen on the outside. By this point, Samsung has a tried and true formula for its foldable phones. The Z Fold6 definitely won't shock anyone. The major changes here are a more refined design, a brighter screen, and a new chipset. Samsung also emphasizes the inclusion of Galaxy AI features here, like we saw in the Galaxy S24 series, and by now they've rolled out to last year's flagships as well. Let's start off with the Z Fold6's design though. The idea is the same as last year. Again, the external panels are covered by sturdy Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and a flex hinge is made from armor aluminum. And the hinge can also hold the phone open to any angle, sort of like what you'd expect from the hinge of a laptop. However, the phone still can't unfold completely flat, something that Samsung can maybe address for the next generation. Still, the hinge is more compact now, so you get a wider cover screen while the phone is pretty much the same width as before. The Z Fold6 is a bit thinner than the previous model, and is lighter too, at 239 grams. Plus, a new improvement is that in addition to the waterproofing like last year, there's also now dust protection. The IP rating here is now IP48. While the Z Fold6 is folded, you'll use the cover screen. We're now looking at a slightly larger and wider 6.3-inch screen, as the aspect ratio has moved from roughly 23:9 to 22:9. We wish it was even wider though. Other foldables have larger screens and aspect ratios closer to 20:9. The inner display is a 7.6-inch foldable OLED panel with a 120Hz refresh rate and a nearly square 10.5:9 aspect ratio. The brightness has gotten a notable improvement. We measured over 750 nits maximum with the manual slider, which could boost to over 1600 nits in auto mode, compared to 1100 last year. The cover display is a similar story. Samsung did a good job in matching the brightness of the two screens. We measured around 780 nits on the manual slider, and over 1550 nits in auto mode. The Z Fold6's displays are sharp and contrasty, and on the inner one, the under-display selfie cam stays out of the way of your viewing. It's nice to have that larger size for certain things too, and both screens support HDR10+ video. Samsung hasn't made any changes to the crease where the inner screen folds over. It's just as pronounced as it was last year. The refresh rate behavior of the Z Fold6 is the same on both the inner and the outer displays. The 120Hz smooths out movements on the screen while you swipe around, and is quick to dial down to 24Hz when you stop interacting with the screen to save power. Samsung claims it can go down to 1Hz as well. Stylus support is maintained on the Z Fold6, along with a bunch of exclusive apps to take advantage of it. You still don't get a holder for the stylus built into the phone though. And it's worth mentioning that only the foldable internal display supports the S Pen. You can't use the stylus on the cover screen. For audio, the Z Fold6 has a pair of stereo speakers. They're slightly quieter than last year, with a loudness rating of good, but the sound quality seems better, with nicer sounding bass. You can wake up and unlock the Z Fold6 with a side-mounted fingerprint reader, which is speedy and reliable. And while storage isn't expandable through microSD, you can get the Z Fold6 with 256 or 512 gigs on board, or a whole terabyte. The interface of the Z Fold6 is Samsung's One UI 6.1.1 on top of Android 14. It's generally the same UI as you'd find on other Samsung phones, but there are a few extra foldable specific functions here too. One of these is a taskbar at the bottom for quick shortcuts, like you'd get on a tablet. This provides easy access to recent apps. It's easy to transition from the cover screen to the inner screen, but by default the phone goes into standby when you close it. You can set it up though, so that in both directions you can transition seamlessly between the two screens. The Flex Mode panel splits the UI of certain apps between the two halves of the screen when the phone is partially folded. And like before, multitasking is quite easy here. You can drag and drop app icons to go into split screen mode, with up to 3 apps running at once. You can also have apps open within floating windows. And you can minimize these floating apps into a bubble on the side of the screen, to be hidden yet accessible. A big focus of the software this year are the AI-based features which debuted on the Galaxy S24 series. These include things like transcription of voice recordings, circle to search, composer within the keyboard, and Google Gemini. One feature which has been modified for the foldables is Samsung's Live Interpreter. Here you can have a conversation with someone in 2 different languages face to face. One person sees the translation on the main screen, while the other one sees the cover screen. And one AI feature specific to the stylus is Sketch to Image. You can draw something, as best as you can, and the AI will generate art to replace it with. And last but not least, the Z Fold6 will get extensive software support matching that of this year's S series, 7 generations of OS upgrades, and 7 years of security patches. And if you'd like to find out more about One UI's specific features, you can check out our dedicated video. Maybe the biggest difference between the Galaxy Z Fold6 and last year's Z Fold 5 is the chipset. The new model uses Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, a slightly overclocked version found in the Galaxy S24 Ultra. However, in benchmarks, the Z Fold 6 didn't post as high numbers as the S24 Ultra. But of course, the performance here is every bit flagship grade, with plenty of power for gaming and multitasking. Samsung claims better thermal management this year thanks to a larger vapor chamber. However, the results here during our prolonged stress test were nothing to write home about. We observed significant thermal throttling, similar or even worse than what we've seen from other flagships. The battery capacity here is the same as last year at 4400 mAh. Overall, the battery life is about the same, even slightly less. The phone earned an overall active use score of 11 hours and 31 minutes in our tests, which is still decent. The Z Fold 6 is only rated for up to 25 watts of charging power, and there's no charger included. The charging speed appears even slower than last year too. With a proper adapter, we were able to go from 0 to just 38% in half an hour, and a full charge took an hour and 41 minutes. There is support for wireless charging and reverse wireless charging too. The cameras of the Z Fold 6 are essentially the same as what we saw last year, as well as the year before. There's a 50 megapixel main cam, a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto cam, and a 12 megapixel ultrawide. The main cam's daylight photos are very good, nicely detailed, with relatively natural rendition. The colors have enough pop without going overboard, and dynamic range is excellent. Skin tones come out well too, and faces are well exposed. Fine facial details could be sharper though. In low light, the Z Fold 6 uses some level of night mode processing automatically. The main camera captures very good detail in the dark, and we really don't mind the bit of grit that comes with it. Colors are pleasant, and the dynamic range is good, with a slightly contrasty look. Let's move on to the telephoto camera, which left us with mixed impressions. On several occasions, we got these hazy and soft results that look like they're misfocused. It could be a specific issue for our review unit though. In the instances when we did get sharp photos, they were nicely detailed, with great colors and excellent dynamic range. In low light, the telephoto camera captures nicely detailed shots, and the moderate amount of noise isn't a problem. Colors remain nice on this camera as well, and dynamic range is also not an issue. However, that softness we mentioned in the daytime can be seen in some night scenes too. The Z Fold 6's ultra-wide camera may not be impressive in its specs, but it does an adequate job in practice. There's no noise and detail is good, though sharpening is dialed pretty high. Dynamic range is good, and colors are pleasing as well. The ultra-wide camera does a decent job at night. Like the other cameras, it also uses a laid-back noise reduction, resulting in more detail, but also more noise. Dynamic range is good, and colors are likable. Now let's talk selfies. One of the benefits of having a foldable device is that you can snap selfies using the rear cameras, using the cover screen as a viewfinder. These sorts of selfies taken with the main cam look really nice, as you'd expect. You get the same good quality as the main cam's other shots. You can also take selfies in a more typical fashion, using the 10 megapixel selfie cam that sits within the cover screen. Its photos are alright, but they have a lot of sharpening added. And then there's even the 4 megapixel under-display selfie camera from the inner screen. This camera is meant more for video calls, and its selfies are soft and poor in quality. Moving on to video recording, you can record in 8K with the main cam, but we find 4K more practical. Overall, the 4K videos taken with all of the Z Fold 6's rear cameras are good. The level of detail isn't as high as on other flagships, but we like the color rendition, which is vibrant without going overboard. The dynamic range is wide too. We can also commend Samsung for the consistent look between the 3 cameras. The electronic video stabilization is excellent too, smoothing out the footage nicely. And in low light, the main camera can produce some solid quality videos. So that's the Galaxy Z Fold 6. Samsung has created another high-quality foldable flagship here for sure, but not much has actually changed since last year. Sure, the phone is ever so slightly thinner and has some dust protection now. The screen is brighter and slightly wider, and there's also the latest chipset. But that's not really enough to justify an upgrade if you already have a Z Fold 5. In fact, while the Z Fold 6 is a solid foldable, the Z Fold 5 may be the better choice to buy since it offers essentially the same experience for a lot less money. Thanks for watching, guys. Here are links to a couple of other foldable reviews on our channel, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 and the OnePlus Open. Let us know what you think, and I'll see you on the next one.